Hey, welcome to the Cyber Savvy Woman, where women business owners reclaim their power in the digital world. We shatter the myth that cybersecurity is too complex to master and transform protection strategies into clear, actionable guidance. This is your digital empowerment sanctuary, where cyber fear becomes cyber confidence. Whether you're protecting client trust as a therapist or safeguarding financial data as an advisor, you'll hear from women founders who've conquered digital challenges and security experts who speak your language. Every woman leading a business deserves to feel unshakable in her digital decisions, no matter her technical background. Are you ready to stop letting cybersecurity intimidate you and start letting it elevate you? Here's your host, Rachele Schainker.
Welcome back to the Cyber Savvy Woman, where we talk about practical ways women can protect themselves, their businesses, and their futures in our increasingly digital world. I'm your host, Rachele Schainker, a Silicon Valley technologist and owner of the award-winning managed service provider, CMIT Solutions of San Mateo. Today's conversation is something most businesses think they understand, but very few actually operationalize: trust. Christina Garnett isn't just talking about customer experience, she's redefining it. From her work as a fractional chief customer officer to creating the customer trust equation and customer trust infrastructure, she's helping companies scale without breaking the relationship that built them. And today we're going to unpack what that really looks like, especially in a world driven by automation, AI, and speed. Christina, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat.
Yeah. So for our listeners, kind of take us through, where, how did you end up here? Kind of what was your background? How did you end up looking at, how we can operationalize trust? What's that journey look like?
Absolutely. Well, it's been all over the place. I am very much a multi-passionate polymath, whatever you want to call it. So I started off as an English major. I wanted to write the next great American novel, as we all did. And then when I got out and graduated, I was looking to figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up, and was offered a math position. So I wound up teaching math for 5 years, 1 year public and 4 years in private. And after that time, I met my husband, got married, had to figure out, I was a stay-at-home mom for a few years, and then re-entered the market to figure out what that looked like. And so I've sat at every table. I was a career services person, where I was basically consulting and telling people what they needed to do to get hired at a technical college. I wound up working in an art museum, doing our advancement coordination, doing research on who would be the best donors, what does that look like, and wound up starting our social media accounts for Twitter and Facebook. And then started doing more and more consulting in the social media space, started doing more just actually hands-on social media management, and then kept progressing, got into agency work, was doing social strategy, social listening, moderation on crisis comms, all of that, all the way up to working at HubSpot and working on building a community of Hub fans, of our top advocates and things of that nature. And then just kept seeing over and over again this through line of everything that I was doing, which was understanding people. What are people looking for? What do people want? What does the connection look like? And so when I left to start my own company, my own consultancy, it became very clear I wanted the full customer experience, which is not just support, and it's not just social, it's not just sales and marketing, it's everything, because they do work in tandem, and they need to work in tandem for you to actually fix CX. And I keep seeing all this technology and all this optimization and all this automation, and how there's a shiny new tool every day to improve your CX, but I'm seeing trust completely fall by the wayside. And so then it got more and more into, because I'm always reading, I'm always learning, got in deeper and deeper into sociology, because I am an observer by nature. And so was really looking into what is the connection between sociology, how we operate as humans, and trust. And that's kind of led me to where I am today.
Yeah, I love that journey, and I love that you picked up on that, because it's such a key part of it as a business owner. As we'll get into, that trust between us, what we're providing, and our clients, and how easily it can be broken, but how you can also maintain it and strengthen it. So let's kind of get into that. You say that companies, break the relationships that built them as they scale. Why does that happen so consistently? Is this a leadership issue, systems issue, or a mindset issue, would you say?
I think it is a blinders on issue. When you are a leader and you want to scale, because no one it's if you can't go on the internet and not hear the next thing about like, do you want to grow your business? Do you want to 10x it? Do you want to like it's pervasive. And so companies want to grow, they want to scale. Great, that's fantastic. When you scale, you immediately start thinking as a leader, what do I need to do infrastructurally to make this scalability sustainable and possible? And so what you wind up doing is you look at your own homework, you look at your own experience. So what does this need to look like for this company to work for me, for this growth to impact me? And so what happens is brands scale, and they absolutely scale their infrastructure, their hiring practices, their standard operating procedures, everything they need on their end, but they never consider what scale needs to look like for the customer. And so usually if they do ever think about the customer, they think, "Oh, we should get a tech tool for that. We should bring something in here," not realizing that that tool does not magically replace intent. And so if the whole idea is like, "Oh, we need to scale our customer experience too, let's just onboard this tool," you're gonna be disappointed, and it's not gonna be the tool's fault. It's because you did not come with the intent of what does scalability for customer experience need to look like? It's just like, "Well, we had this tool. We onboarded this. Why is it not magically working?" I was like, "It doesn't work like that."
Yeah, it's not going to fix it. You've introduced the idea of customer trust infrastructure. What's broken about most companies' approach to CX today, would you say?
It's twofold. I think there is a disconnection between the academic research that's been done around trust and what practitioners need. So what you have is you have a lot of teams that are basically hitting walls, having to feel like they need to reinvent the wheel and fix things that they don't even have names for, when there are names for that. It's in the literature. And so one part of the customer trust infrastructure is to build a bridge between the academic research and the practitioner work, because a lot of what we're seeing, like I see this on LinkedIn and like social media all the time, where someone will acknowledge this cultural moment that's happening. And they're like, "This is happening and this is new." And I'm like, technically, this was described 100 years ago by a sociologist. And here's what that actually looks like. And so we don't need to reinvent the wheel. And I think that it would actually help us solve things quicker if we knew what the trust research already said. We knew what sociologists who've been studying humans forever, what they have been saying and what they have been observing. And then the second thing would be, I think that there is a disconnect between, especially now with economic uncertainty and layoffs and things of that nature, is in corporate, there is a massive zero-sum game. And what that's doing is as you scale, you're creating silos because those silos actually create the infrastructure for you to grow. The problem is that they also separate your teams, so now they're not necessarily sharing intel and data and findings and all these things, and so that's a huge trade-off in the internal infrastructure that you're creating that winds up creating a worse customer experience. And so we need to get those teams to play together, but they're not gonna wanna play together if they're too busy worried about losing their job. And so it's like, I can't help you with your OKRs because my OKRs are gonna keep me safe. And so it's a mixture of like all of these. It's kind of a perfect storm of we've created all these cultural environments that incentivize individual work, but you need everyone to come together as a team sport in order to actually fix everything. Like, there's no one person that can fix everything.
Exactly. Yeah. Or one department. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, one department. But we keep putting that on the shoulders of support. And it's like, I'm gonna go ahead and tell you, they're fixing problems they didn't cause. They're apologizing for things they didn't say. Like, they are a Band-Aid that's having to triage things that you could fix, but it's gonna take the whole team coming together to fix it.
Yeah. And is that where the customer trust equation comes in? The consistency, response, connection, value, friction. I think that's very powerful. I love that. Share with us a little bit about how you set that up, how you track that. Just let's go into that. I'm curious.
So the thing for me, I've been in corporate long enough to realize that if you can't measure something or you can't track something, no one cares. It's just this like, "Oh, that's a really nice tweet," versus we can actually implement that. And so in doing a lot of trust research, I looked to see kind of what was already around, and there is a trust equation that currently exists for advisors. And when I tried to apply it to the traditional B2B and B2C customer, it kept not working for me. And so it's like, how do I, and it kept being more about like, how do I translate this into something they can use versus how can I make it something that like, I understand what that means. Now I can start implementing it. And so I looked at my own work, and then I also looked at my own experience as a consumer. And when I am thinking about what companies and brands that I trust, what is it about it? Like, what are all the moving pieces that actually facilitate that trust and make it something like, no, I actually like, it's not enough to have good intent. I actually believe you have my back here. And so I kept coming to the same pieces, which was trust equals consistency plus response plus connection plus value minus friction. And so all of those pieces, you're able to look at, they each live in different departments throughout your org, depending on what the work is. And so in order for the whole equation to work, you have to think about like, what is every department bringing to the table? What does that look like? And so I wound up creating a diagnostic through Lovable, where you can actually, it has 5 questions for each variable. You're able to self-grade yourself, and then it will tell you based off of your questions, like, all right, here's your weak points. And then diagnostically, here's a couple suggestions on what you can start doing today so that you can start improving that individual variable so that you can start building this up. Because we tend to think of trust as this like warm and fuzzy ephemeral feeling. And then we also tend to think of it as like, you either trust me or you don't trust me. And that's not true. There's a scale, there's a sliding scale of trust. Because think about it, like even with your friends, there are some friends that you trust more than others.
Or you know they're going to come through, right?
Yeah, you know they're going to take care of it.
You know they're your friend, maybe, but they maybe have a tendency to not always follow through. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and so it isn't this binary, they trust us or they don't trust us. It has depth. And so this creates an opportunity for you to really look at it. And then for friction, I think a lot of us, because we love to optimize, but we optimize for the internal, not the external. It gives people an opportunity to really think about like, all right, we have this drip campaign, we have these workflows, they look great on our side, but are we actually passing the buck to the customer? So now the customer is actually feeling more friction? Because in some cases, yes. Like in some cases, you didn't destroy the friction, you just gave it to the customer instead of your internal team.
Right. Oh, it's fascinating.
And so knowing those questions to ask and knowing like, what does friction look like? Because sometimes it's like, it's just too hard to like, I want to pay you, but it's too hard. Or I want to cancel, but it's too hard. Or I want to unsubscribe from this email. Why do you have it so small? Or it could be like, you're not transparent about where my data is going, or you've added all these AI tools, but I don't know how that impacts my data. So it can go anywhere from, you haven't given me anything to trust from a transparency perspective, or it could be, you're just really hard to work with. Why are you so hard to work with? It can be a range of things. And so we tend to think of like friction being, I had to rage quit and like slam my computer down. It's usually not that bad. It's usually like a collection. It's death by 1,000 cuts. Usually, these tiny little things add together, and eventually they're like, you know what? It's not worth all this trouble. I don't think I need to do this anymore. And then you've lost. And then by the time the customer says that out loud, there's nothing you can do to triage that relationship.
Yeah. Do you think friction is a cultural problem, or is it a process problem? Or I mean, I'm sure it's a little bit of both. Yeah.
I think it's both, and I think that in the pursuit of trying to get everything right for us, I don't think it's a lack of empathy. I think it's a lack of taking the time to have the empathy and to really figure out what this looks like. So great case in point is, let's say that you have a problem and you go into support and the first thing they want to do is they want to see your screen. Now that's friction, because I'm like, what do you mean you want to see my screen? And do you want me to screenshot it, or do you want me to get on a camera and like all these other things? Now that friction can be turned into a positive really quickly to say like, hey, there's like 10 different ways this could go wrong. And I need to see your screen so that way I can properly figure out what's going on. And then I will walk you through how to do it. And I'm going to take the time. I'm not going to rush you. No worries. Like, oh, you don't know how to share your screen? Here's how you do it. Like just handling it in an empathetic way. That goes from friction. That goes from like, this is a headache to, oh, you're going to hold my hand and make me feel safe. Exact same experience or exact same catalyst, but the way you handle it and the way you communicate it and walk people through and give them psychological safety completely changes that friction into connection now. And so I think it's both, but I think that as a whole, we are deeply reactionary in CX. We don't want to fix the problem until someone's yelling at us. We give people an NPS survey, and as long as like the NPS number is a certain thing, like, oh, we're doing fine. And then we don't realize there's a problem until our retention rates drop. And so what we wind up doing is, because we are so reactionary, we usually don't care about the customer until they're gone. It's kind of like you don't realize you weren't treating your girlfriend or boyfriend well until they break up with you. Like, maybe, controversial opinion, maybe take care of them before it gets there.
Yeah. Yeah. I've kind of incorporated, I mean, I do QBRs, meet with them quarterly, but I'm also, whenever I have a conversation lately, I have been, any feedback for me?
Yeah.
Like, I'm just asking, like, anything we can do, and it's interesting. They almost are not really, they aren't expecting it. And there's like a pregnant pause, there's a pause, like they don't quite know. And I was like, if you think of something, email me, but it's, just trying to, in, make that more of something that I'm asking about, and make it more my part of my process. But yeah, interesting. You mentioned earlier about teams not necessarily collaborating, not in a bad way, just that they're siloed or how they're set up. Why is that still such a problem? I know this is a known, the silo. How can they? Is it KPIs, tools, leadership? How can we, break down those silos if we see them in our organization?
I think, well, a couple ways to do it is, if you already have a community within your org or you have built it for your customers, encourage your internal team to be a part of that. I think community is the great silo killer. And also, just in general, a lot of what we see in sociology is, I follow Durkheim. He's probably my favorite sociologist, and he came up with a term called anomie, and it's about what happens when you're normless and people feel purposeless, they feel rudderless, they start like questioning everything because what they've built their world or career on no longer works. And that's very similar to what we're seeing now with like millennial midlife crisis and AI kind of creating this secondary industrial revolution. And basically his recommendation, his prescription for how to deal with anomie is to go back to the smaller corners of the internet, go back to your local community.
Yeah. Interesting.
Go like foster connection again. And so the answer to a lot of what we're seeing from like the worldview, a lot of what will fix that and what we're kind of going to is, we need to go back to the group chat. We need to go back to these smaller groups where we can feel human connection, where we can trust on a small scale, and kind of start treating that like basically exercising that muscle again. And so for teams, it's creating a culture of collaboration. It's creating a culture where like you're not family, but it is a team sport, and we're going to show up for each other like we are a team. And so we're going to win together. We're going to lose together. We're going to do all these things. And so figuring out what that looks like, because if I were to go into a client and say like, hey, you need to collaborate, and I don't give them the tools to do that, and I don't give them like a process, then they don't hear we need to collaborate. They hear, this is one more project I have to do. This is one more set of meetings I have to. And that's another thing too, is you need to collaborate. And the first thing people will do, like, all right, cool, I'll get a standing meeting up for us. And I was like, no, please don't do that. Please don't do that. Because anyone that's on that thing is like, once again, it's one more thing to add to my plate. It's one more thing that I don't like. And so what that does is it sets up collaboration to be a hassle instead of something that makes everyone's job better. And so what does it look like for you? Is it like we have a standing Google sheet where we just share notes? Is it that we basically do like, we're going to do one call and we're going to brain dump, and we're just basically going to have like our own kind of cab, our own kind of council or think tank around this? But if the response is like, we want to create structure immediately, I'm going to set up a weekly call. Instead of, what do we need to do before that even happens so that people feel psychologically safe, they feel excited about this, they understand how it will help them with their work, so that they'll know that they are not being like, something's not being added to their plate. This is actually net positive
for them. Yeah, exactly.
all of that has to happen before we start setting up a cadence and start figuring out like the infrastructure of that.
What the activities look like. Yeah. Who do you think should quote unquote own, customer trust in an organization?
I think it should be the chief customer officer if there is one. I know that not every single org can either afford one or has the capacity or the need, depending on how big or how small they are. But I do think it should be the chief customer officer. If it is not the chief customer officer, I think it should be the CEO. I know the CEO's got a lot on their plate, but I think that at the end of the day, the customer has to be seen at the forefront as a major piece of it. Because like a great case in point is the new Burger King CEO. They had this whole campaign around like we got rid of the mascot, the king is you now. He did like a listening tour. He did all these things. And for me, like watching it, I was very torn because part of me was like, this is everything I want. This is so perfect. This is magic. This is great. And part of me was like, all of y'all should be doing this anyway.
Right. Exactly. Why? Yeah, exactly.
Like this should be the bar, not this like magical, he listened to me. Yeah, and so for me, I was very torn with it. I was very like happy. I was very excited. I was like, yep, this is exactly what I would prescribe. Like this is what you should be doing. But it turned into this like, wow, look at what they're doing. I'm like, every single one of you should be doing like this is not magical. This is actually caring about the customer. And how did we get so far away from taking care of them that this is magical now? Yeah, it's hard. But that's a perfect example of like, you need to do it. Like if you're the CEO, I need you to listen to your stakeholders and your customer. It's both. It's not just your stakeholders.
Yeah, that makes sense. Technology is supposed to improve customer experience theoretically, but you sometimes will argue that it damages the trust. Is it because automation is going too far, or are we optimizing for the wrong thing, or what happens when technology is kind of the culprit there? And I know we touched on this a little bit earlier.
Yeah. So it's a few things. I don't think there is this blanketed bad intent of I'm going to put this evil piece of software into this thing and it's going to destroy trust and like mustache twirly, ha ha ha, I win.
No, yeah.
It's not that, but I do think I think we're seeing it now, is I think we try to treat tech like this magical button that will do all of our work for us, that will replace humanity, that will replace empathy, that will replace the work that teams can do, and it just simply cannot. And so I think that we need to be, and I think we're going to start to see it more and more with AI as the pricing of tokens is getting more and more expensive. I think a lot of teams that threw AI into everything were like, it'll fix it. It'll do it. It'll do all the things, like ask it to do all these prompts. I think that with the price increase, what we're going to see is we're going to see these same teams be like, all right, we actually have to be strategic here and figure out where can AI create the strongest ROI and where we still actually have a human advantage. And so what I'm hoping for and what I think needs to happen is there needs to be a division of labor. Whether it's AI or a tech stack or whatever it is, there needs to be a division of labor. Where does the human shine? Where do they create connection? Where do they create loyalty? Where do they create people think like, I see this person. I know that if I call to this person, they're going to fix it for me. They're going to go above and beyond. Versus I'm in this drip campaign and I can tell it's a drip campaign, or I'm talking to a chatbot and they're constantly giving me a loop because they can't figure out my context. All of these things. And so we need to look at division of labor, and we need to understand and look at the work that we're doing and say the automation has to do more than it saved us 30 minutes a week.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
You need to look at what it does to the customer, because customers have been on drip campaigns for years now. They know that there is a tool that will make sure you get their first or last name right. Like personalization, what personalization looked like 5-10 years ago is not personalization today. That's like basics. And so if we're going to continue to use tech, which we are going to, and we're going to continue to figure out how we can have it implement and do a lot of our work, we need to be exceptionally thoughtful about where that lives versus what's human and what those actions do to our customers. Does it make them love us more? Does it make them feel connected? Does it make them feel like, oh, this is automated. I already know this is a field email? Because what we do is we're dumping all these email campaigns into people's inboxes. They already feel overwhelmed. And then on top of that, they feel like, oh, okay. And then it's you and with a CTA asking for money. And it's like, what are we doing? Yeah, it's just we've completely lost the idea of what does this look like from the customer's perspective.
Yeah. I mean, part of me thinks that AI, like companies that go really all in on AI, it's going to just show the gap between, it's like you're going to see it kind of widen, and it's going to either, yeah, I mean, I have, conflicting feelings about AI. It's wonderful. It's excellent, but you really have to use it just like as a flavoring, not as like a foundation, because it can just go so wrong, so bad. Sometimes, speak to a representative, right? Everyone, they want to talk to somebody. They don't want to, have a chat bot fix their problems.
And I think it also helps too that like brands want to use AI, and I'm very conflicted with it as well. I see things and I'm like, this could be very awesome. And then I see others where like, you have to be kidding me. Please don't do that. The problem for me is I'm very pro human experience. And so I instead of saying like I'm pro AI or anti AI, I would much rather say I'm pro human experience, because that is what I am. And for me, brands who want to automate or put AI into everything, they still want the loyalty that comes with a human connection. And I just need to shake them and be like, that is not going to work, because in creating full autonomy, you have eliminated the conditions that made human loyalty possible. And so you need to understand you can absolutely have this, but then you can't act like you have this lovely, fuzzy, warm relationship with humans, because you don't.
Yeah, exactly. If someone is listening and they feel like they maybe have lost their customer trust, or it's going in the wrong direction, can it be rebuilt? What does it look like? How long does it take? Is it possible?
I think it's possible, but it takes longer depending on how bad the thing is. And a lot of teams, a lot of companies, the worse it is, the less they're like, it's gonna take 7 years to repair this. We're not gonna do the work.
Correct. Yeah.
And so I think that trust can be repaired, but it's just like any other human relationship. You're gonna have to show up 10 times positive to undo that one time negative. You're gonna have to like continually show up over and over again, especially showing up when you have nothing to gain. Like you're gonna be talking to customers who are not gonna convert for a very long time, but you have to keep showing you care about them in order for them to eventually convert. And there's a lot of companies that it's the short-term thinking has won. And so they're gonna do a press release, or they'll do an apology on an Instagram post and be like, see, I did the thing. And I'm like, that is like the first baby step. Like we got a whole marathon to go now. And a lot of brands are like, no, we said the apology, we're fine. I'm like, okay, well, that's not going to work for people, but okay.
Yeah. Interesting. All right, Christina, we've come to the part of the podcast where we do a quick little rapid fire. I'll ask you some questions. You share with me what comes top of mind. Do you believe trust is built faster through systems or people?
People.
And what do you think is the biggest lie companies believe about customer experience, or the biggest misnomer, if you will?
That if they are retained, that they're happy. You have a lot of customers who don't like you that are still paying you monthly.
Right, exactly. One word that destroys trust.
I would say CTAs.
Yeah. And one word that builds trust.
Empathy.
And is AI an opportunity or a risk?
It's both.
Both, yeah. And scale or intimacy, if you had to choose?
Intimacy.
And what do you think most founders get wrong about their customers?
I think that they assume that they just have to get them to convert once and they'll stay. They're focused on acquisition and not people.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yep. And what does being cyber savvy mean to you?
I think it means that you not only understand technology and the conditions around your work, but you understand the implications of technology and the internet and digital world for not only you, but for your customers, for your colleagues, for everyone else.
Oh, Christina, that's perfect. This conversation really has challenged how we think about growth, systems, and trust. What I'm walking away with is the idea that trust isn't accidental, it's designed. And if you're scaling your business without thinking about that, you're probably breaking something you don't even see. Thank you so much for bringing such depth and clarity to this conversation. And to our listeners, if you want to connect with Christina, please make sure you check out the show notes for her links. And Christina, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming. I love what you're doing.
Thanks.
Yeah, have a good day.
The Cyber Savvy Woman podcast requires more than a conversation. It takes action, research, and collective wisdom. If today's episode resonated with you, we'd love to hear your insights. Join the conversation and help us shape the future together. We'll be back with more stories, strategies, and real-world solutions that are making a difference for everyone. In the meantime, be sure to subscribe, rate, write a review, and share it with someone you think would benefit from it too. Hey, thanks for listening, and see you on the next episode.